Hi, I'm Heather Carlisle and welcome. I want to chat with you about betrayal. My opinion is that good people really don't ever mean to betray somebody unless they've already been betrayed, and that the foundation of that is something somewhere along the line, or some things, we're missing. And that can be a whole complex series of things. It can be one thing that happened when we were a child and we were abused or traumatized. But there's always a reason. We don't typically set out to hurt somebody or lie to somebody or be unfaithful or to cheat. So when we find ourselves in the midst of a relationship with a betrayal, what I want to do is kind of become a detective that goes into things and researches, finds clues, connects the dots, figures it out. So where I start is understanding what we all just, in a healthy way, need in order to grow up our abilities, to be a good person, a competent person, a successful person. So in terms of being able to do that myself, I had to create a model through which I could look at people so that I didn't have any big blind spots. And that's my hope in helping people, where I can show you the entire picture and you can see, I got this and this, oh, I didn't get that, or this I got, but it was not quite complete. So let me show you the model that I created. It took me about, when I decided to do this, it took me about 7 years. I did, so let's move it over to, so that you can see that. There it is. I call this building blocks of a healthy life. And so if you look on the column here, you might be able to see my mouse or my pointer. That starting at the bottom, this is the first thing we all need. And these are things naturally that as parents and adults, we want to give the young ones growing up. Sometimes we've been deprived or betrayed or harmed ourselves, and then we don't even know that this is something that we need to ensure that the young ones receive or learn about. So the first thing is health, your physical safety and security, whatever it is you need physically in the five senses world to stay alive and hopefully stay alive healthily. Next one, the orange circle, is relationships, because that's the next thing that we need when we're born and we're starting to grow up. We need to be bonded with people, because in order to trust life, we need to trust people. And therefore we think, I'm a good person, my mom's good, my dad's good, people are good in general, which means I now have a natural ability to have relationships. Next one is a positive sense of self or self-esteem, feeling like I'm good, I'm a good person. And it's very simple to teach our little ones that when they're young. If that's compromised or damaged when we're too young, it's difficult to teach as the years go by. And then everything on top of that, of course, is compromised. My cat, hi Tookie. She thinks that the food bowl is empty. Actually, she's right. Hi Took. So the next one is the pink heart, and that's emotional intelligence. And that's our ability to be compassionate and empathetic and have a loving relationship. The next one, number 5, is personal power, which is in the world of education or psychology, we call that the executive function. Come on, you can come up here. You want to come up here? Yeah. So that means that we know how to, I think about it as basically, we know how to run our own mind. Then the next one is intelligence, and that's typically what we test for intelligence. I think about it as IQ, or the knowledge that we gain, the mental abilities that we have. And then the number 7, the last one, is honor, character, virtue, and integrity, of wanting to do the right thing. Hi, Took. So then the next column, notice on the top of the next two columns, it's purpose and mission. So I make a distinction between purpose and mission. Purpose is I want to get good at what I do. Come here. And mission is I want to take what I'm good at and give it to the world. Implement, use my talents to make a difference. So those are generally the components of a healthy life, a healthy person. And if there's something missing, usually we can find it in one of those pockets. Now, I want to remind you, we're not all doing all of those things at the same time, and we don't all develop all of those things fully. We don't need to. But this shows where the blind spots or the hurt spots or the empty spots are. So now I'm going to show you how it looks when we don't get what we need. So let me show you that one. Here we go. So let me put this one away. And let me put this bigger. Whoops. I don't know what I just did. Ah, there it is. I just made it bigger. Apologies. Okay. So what I want to do is show you what it looks like when we don't get that. And so these are the healthy life building blocks, and when we don't get it, I call it ouch rage. So let me just transition back to this. Yeah. When we betray someone, it means that we are operating on what we want, what we need, whether it's conscious or unconscious. Sometimes we're very centered on getting our own needs met. Sometimes we're also centered on pleasing somebody else or trying to control somebody else because maybe we're afraid, or we're afraid of losing something, or we're afraid that we're not going to get something. So when we find that we're doing something that maybe hurts a loved one, we didn't set out to have revenge. Most of the time. Sometimes if someone has hurt us, then we have the impulse to get revenge or to pay them back, or we want them to hurt as badly as we hurt. And so then that's a whole nother part of betrayal where it begins to then spiral. So one person is hurt, they hurt back, and where do we interrupt that? Sometimes that ends up in consistent fighting or disrespect or harm to each other. Thank you, Tookie. She's keeping us company tonight. So I want to show you how that works. Now, to a greater or lesser degree, we're going to try and protect ourselves when we've been hurt or when we don't get what we need. And those are what I call the ouch rage systems of acting out. So that means the protector in us is acting out either to get what we need, which is a compensatory manipulative activity, or it's trying to survive and function with internal damage or harm or hurt. And usually that means that we're trying to calm ourselves down or numb ourselves out from our pain, or we're trying to stimulate ourselves to distract ourselves from the pain. So let me just show you what that looks like. because those, we end up, if we use those too consistently, they end up being compensatory activities where that compensatory activity, or quote unquote using, is more important than our beloved or our loved ones or our relationships, because it's then internally more at a survival level, more a personal, we're personally driven to numb ourselves, to distract ourselves, to get what we need. That looks on the outside, it looks like we're being selfish. The truth is that there's something missing. And sometimes it's we're deprived, sometimes we've been harmed and not healed. Okay, so I'm going to go and I'm going to pull that one up for you. Because I want you to see how that works specifically, because this is the roots of betrayal. It's self-care and ending up looking like we're against somebody, when the truth is we're just trying to survive ourselves. So let's look at this. So this is the same building blocks on the left-hand side, and these are just the general basic healthy needs that we need to have met when we're kids. But see at the top it says from healthy to hurt, to acting out in ouch rage. And I call it ouch rage because it's a form of anger. Anger is usually some form of defense. And that means defending ourselves from some hurt that we're either afraid might happen or has already happened. So then the left-hand side is the 7 basic healthy developmental needs that we looked at previously. And then the next column I've put, these are how we get hurt or suffer ordeals. And if we don't heal from those hurts or ordeals, then the internal protector in us acts out to self-stimulate or self-numb, or to protect ourselves from others by our behavior towards them. And there we have the foundation of betrayal. There's something missing. Sometimes a lot of things missing, but notice that if we didn't get those first 7 needs met, then there's something there that's missing. And I'm going to Tookie, do you want to leave? Do you want to go outside? Okay, that's it, girl. She wants my attention and she can't have it for a few minutes. Anyway, notice that the first level, the way down at the bottom there, when we don't just get enough of our sensory needs met, then we use something sensory to self-comfort, self-soothe, or self-stimulate. So smoking, eating, self-harm, sexual things. If you have been betrayed by someone in that way, we want to look at what happened to them where those very beginning stages of their life were compromised in some way and not healed. Now, it's not a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a parent to heal that wound of an adult. For the children, yes, absolutely. But in an adult relationship, that means that we need to do that healing ourselves. Because whatever happened, happened when we were a kid. And we're not a child anymore. We don't have parents anymore that appropriately can heal us. And that's then the personal journey of taking care of ourselves. And you know what I say, know yourself, treasure life, and love others. And this means going into a place sometimes where people are afraid, where they're carrying a lot of pain or they're carrying a lot of fear, and they're afraid to go there, partly because nobody went there with them to show them this is how healing works. And then the next step, when we've been rejected in some way, and it's interesting to me, when people are rejected, it's so often not really much of their parents doing. It was bullying. It was how they were treated by the kids on their block when they were 4, or in middle school when they were 12, or in high school. So those places when we've been rejected or hurt or humiliated and made an outcast in some way, we can't survive that without what I call ouch rage. We're not here to be mean. We're here to love and be loved. And it's searing. No matter how hard your growing up years have been, if you really haven't shut yourself down and rejected life, you're still going to feel the hurt of somebody being critical or judgmental or humiliating. And then we feel like we don't belong, and we're going to look for somewhere to belong, and very often it's with someone else who's been damaged or wounded or rejected. Next level is victimized, where whatever happened, our sense of worthiness, competence, self-esteem was squashed and damaged, and that could be bullying as well. But it also can be people that just don't pay attention, people that tell us humiliating things. Sometimes, and I remember when I was in school, I think my dad wanted to motivate me to work harder in school. And in those days, motivation was not understood. And what he did was actually the opposite of what would have motivated me. He compared me with kids who were doing better. And that was not going to be successful with a girl like me. I needed encouragement. I needed somebody to sit down and do homework with me. I needed somebody to companion me and be beside me and show me how. But of course, nobody ever did that for him. So how was he going to know to do that with his little girl? So much of this woundedness is not volitional. People don't intend to hurt. They just have a blind spot. And again, when I say this, it's we are blindsided and betrayed by the times we're born into and by the traditions that we inherit. Equally so, if not more so, for our parents. Then personal power, where we've been sabotaged one way or the other, where either our executive function isn't developed because we've had no self-discipline and no limits, or on the other side, where it's been too tight, too stiff, too demanding, too perfectionistic, or it wasn't there and we became too perfectionistic inside of ourselves. Then we can protest that in various ways because we're disempowered, either by being too hard on ourselves or by just not caring, by saying, why bother? Then intelligence, if we have a stunted mind or we haven't learned enough, interestingly enough, our screen time now will run our mind for us and give us plenty of mental tasks that frankly don't go much of anywhere and keep our minds quite busy and stimulated. And then the last one, if we've been betrayed by somebody being dishonest or not keeping their word, sometimes it's as simple as Mom said that she'd pick us up and she forgot for some reason or another, and we sat there waiting for 20 minutes or 2 hours, and then we lost faith. Then we stopped trusting. So if all of those things are taken into consideration, if we don't grieve and heal those wounds, they stay. We carry them with us. And then somewhere down the road, we will betray the ones closest to us. Oftentimes, when I'm working with a couple and there's been a betrayal, the man or the woman who did it wasn't looking to hurt their partner. In hindsight, then they're so sorry and apologetic. they had no idea that they were hurting their partner because that was the last thing on their mind. Oftentimes they were love-starved, and if they've not been able to bond adequately from that orange circle, from that first level, then what happens is, if you're love-starved, partly you're not going to trust the person who loves you, and partly you're not really going to be naturally connecting or building a bond or a relationship. When that bond thins, then we're vulnerable to whoever else around us, oftentimes at work, sees us at our best. And we feel good in their presence. And then we start talking, and then we become friends, and then we become friends who tell each other our personal problems. And then if we're not careful, it moves into too close. And if it's energized with chemistry, it can become an emotional affair or a physical affair. So when a betrayal happens, when a good person betrays someone, I can usually go backwards and find out where it started with some kind of loss, lack, or wound that is left unhealed. And so that's what people like me do. We help you walk through that. You don't need to do it alone. I don't want you to do it alone. We're here to love and be loved. And so, as I say, know yourself, treasure life, and love others. Talk to you again next week. Thanks for chiming in.